Welcome to Working with SOPs. SOPs are surface operators. This operator family reads, creates, and modifies 3D points, polygons, lines, particles, surfaces, spheres, and metaballs. Now, like all of TouchDesigner, SOPs are usually part of procedural pipelines, and that means that changes to our SOP networks will typically have an impact on our final result. Let's actually take a closer look at what that means. Let's use the Tab key to bring up the upgrade dialog. I'm going to search for a rectangle SOP, and I'm going to add that to my network. I'm going to go ahead and right click on the output of the rectangle and search for a copy SOP and add that here into my network. And next, I'm going to go ahead and just turn the number of copies up to 10. Now, it doesn't look like very much has happened here to get started, but let's go ahead and in the translate parameter, let's change this first field to 1.25. If we click on the translate parameter, we'll see this is actually tx, ty, tz. So translate x, y, and z. I'm going to go ahead and click the translate button one more time, the parameter itself, and that's going to collapse that menu. Now what we can see happened is that each of our copies is translated in the positive x direction by 1.25 units. And in fact, we can see a similar thing happen if we were to say turn up our z, our rotation z parameter here, and how that spins our primitive here on the z-axis. Now, it's often helpful to take a closer look at what's happening inside of our surface operators, and we can use the A key or the viewer active flag to turn on viewer active for our operator. And when we do this, we can tumble our view with the left mouse button, we can pan with the right mouse button, or we can zoom with the middle mouse. I'm going to just pan our view here, or tumble our view here slightly. And now let's go ahead and middle mouse on the translate Z parameter. And here we can actually see that if we drag this left or right, that we're actually pushing our copies forwards or backwards along the Z axis. Now, this isn't the only way that we can interact with a copy SOP. Let's take a look at one other feature. I'm going to start by adding a rectangle SOP here again. And I'm going to go ahead and add a circle SOP as well. Next, I'm going to go ahead and add a copy SOP into my network. Now, into the first input, I'm going to connect my rectangle. And into the second input, I'm going to connect my circle. And what we'll see here will look pretty jumbled as we get started, but let's head back to our rectangle and turn down the size to say 0.1 and 0.1. Now we have a better view of what's happening here. So we have a copy of our first input at each one of the vertices of our second input. Now this is pretty interesting, and we can do lots of really fun and exciting kinds of transformations with this technique. But let's actually take a closer look here at our circle for 1 second. If we make our circle viewer active with the A key, there's a few other pieces that we can actually take a look at here in our viewer. Let's right click inside of the viewer active viewer and select display options. This will bring up another floating window that will actually give us a few other ways to view information for our surface operator. We can see the position of the vertices. We can see the number count on the vertices, which can be helpful. We can see the normals, which are often very useful when we're trying to think about orientation or how our lighting is behaving here with our surface operators. And we can even see the X, Y, Z position for each one of our points as we pan around and examine these. Now, if I ever get too close or lose my position, I can use the H key to home the view of my operator, which can be really helpful for me. Let's go ahead and turn the number of divisions down to say something like 20 or 15, and we can see how that change to our circle actually impacts the results of our copy right away. Let's take a look at another operator workflow that we might use. I'm going to again add a rectangle SOP into my network. I'm going to add a circle SOP in here as well. And this time I'm going to take my circle and I'm going to change its archetype to open and set its ending to be 180 degrees. Next, let's go ahead and add a sweep SOP into our network. Now I'm going to go ahead and connect my rectangle to the first input and my circle to the second input. And what we'll see as a result is that we actually have now one of our input primitives along each one of the vertices of this backbone second input. Now this looks pretty similar to the copy SOP, but there's some other interesting tricks that we can do here. Let's go ahead and turn the scale down just a little bit. I'm going to change that to say just 0.25. And I'm going to change this twist value up to 5. Now, this doesn't look too interesting to get started, but let's actually head to the output page. And now let's turn on the skin. And now we can see that we've created a skinned piece of geometry. Now we're still missing a few features here that I'd like to be able to see. So let's make a few additional changes. Let's right click on the output of the copy and first convert this to a polygon with a convert SOP. And next let's right click on the output and select a facet SOP. I want to generate a kind of low poly look here. So in my facet SOP, I'm going to use unique points and I'm going to click compute normals. Now I can see that I have a slightly different result here with what's happening from my sweep SOP. Now I'm going to back out here slightly in my network and let's make a few other changes. For example, we could come back to our circle and we could turn down the number of divisions to change some of the behavior here, or we could turn up the number of divisions. So this goes back to that idea of our networks being procedural, because it means that changes that we make inside of our operator networks are going to have an impact to our final results. And that's one of the most exciting parts of working with surface operators. Now there's lots of other things you can do with SOPs, but hopefully this gives you an idea of how you can get started.